Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody who has joined from across the globe. I, Bhupesh Daheria, extend very warm welcome to all of you for this very exciting and relevant topic for discussion. How do we really turn assessment into a learning tool? With us, we have a great lineup of speakers with us. We have Anita Ram, we have Laura, we have Dr. Alina, Professor Saurabh, we have Alan. Please switch on your video camera, Dr. Alina, Dr. Saurabh, Laura, and Alan. So we will have panel discussion today, and then we'll have, say, after panel discussion, we'll see the AI in action. And before we start our panel discussion, I'll request Anita to really walk us through our host Assessfy. She will really talk about briefly about Assessfy. Anita, over to you.
Thank you, sir. A very warm welcome to everyone. So, allow me to share my screen where I can really give you a brief about what we are, who we are, what Assessfy does, and what we'll be doing. Just a minute, I'll just share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Anita, please go ahead.
So, hello everyone. My name is Anita Ram, and I'm the director at Assessfy. A very warm welcome to everybody at today's event. Based on our conversation over the years with the educators and the teachers across the globe, be it in the K-12 segment or higher education, what we have observed that typically educators around spend 20% to 60% of their time in designing assessments and evaluating them. But despite this fact, they've spent so much of time into assessment and evaluation process. Still, majority of the students are not getting the mastery or maybe the confidence what they really want, or they are not getting the hold of that subject. Therefore, we are here. We are here with a solution, one of its kind of a solution that is Assessfy AI. Assessfy AI will help educators to reduce their load, I would say, the load where they are into manual conduction of manual assessment, conduction of lot of evaluation process. Assessfy AI will definitely help you to reduce your workload here. And this extra time what you will save would definitely help you to devote for designing more and more assessments to really get into better learning interventions and also to have a good engagement with the students. This is what we have observed over the time. How we can do this? What Assessfy is here for? So, Assessfy is a transformative, revolutionary, one of its kind of a platform that helps in enhancing learning outcomes with automated evaluation and personalized feedback. This can be done for handwritten, digital, and oral assessments, which is used in manual, co-pilot, and autopilot modes, and for all domains and all subjects. How this can be done? There's a short video, just go through the video and then we'll get to the introduction of Assessfy.
Introducing world's first AI-powered auto-grading of descriptive and coding assessments by Assessfy AI. Assessfy AI evaluates answers in descriptive, subjective, scenario-based, or coding assessments and provides A scores. But it doesn't stop there. It goes further by offering feedback that explains why it assigns certain marks and identifies areas for improvement. Assessfy is transforming assessments into effective learning tools because, as we all know, human beings learn and grow through constructive feedback, don't they? Curious about how we make this magic happen? Dive in and let's explore the future of learning together with Assessfy.
So I believe the video must have given you a basic idea of what I was trying to say. So now when I spoke about Assessfy, what Assessfy can really do. So Assessfy AI provides a very personalized and instant feedback to the learners, which eventually helps them to turn the assessment into a learning tool by understanding their weaknesses and their strength after every assessment. It also gives a comprehensive coverage to wide range of assessment, right from, like I said, handwritten to digital to oral, with efficient grading system where every assessment has an auto evaluated evaluation process and uh, feedback mechanism, which frees up lots of faculty's time and they can devote it for conduction of better assessment. A couple of challenges in traditional assessment. This is by our research, what we have identified. So, lack of meaningful feedback and explainability. So, we know in traditional assessment, the focus is just on providing the scores, okay, without any explanation of that scores, which leaves the students actually very unclear about what are their strengths, what are their weakness, where they have to improve, and how the progress should be. Another challenge would be, the assessments and these type of evaluation. What is happening that focuses more onto the in the student community to really develop only the basic knowledge and not focus more onto critical thinking or problem solving sort of uh, areas, which again has a limitations to develop their higher cognitive capabilities. Again, as I said, there's an ineffective use of assessment which can be turned into a learning tool, but rather it is only used in a traditional method to evaluate the student and give them the grades. Another challenge would be limited practice. There's no much time devoted into the practice, which can really help the student to progress and grow. Lack of meaningful feedback and passive learning. So, couple of challenges what we have highlighted. Similarly, challenges when it comes to manual evaluation. Yes, manual evaluation is a process which is a time consuming process. It takes time when the large group sizes, there are large batch size. So how the evaluation will happen, how much time it will take, and how when the grades will go to the students. Inconsistent feedback when there is a subjective kind of evaluation. Of course, to evaluate each lengthy answer, it takes time and it takes time for the faculties to give them the consistent feedback. So that is again one of the challenge what we have noticed, and limited scalability. So as we said, Assessfy support multiple formats of or types of assessment, what can be conducted through the platform, which is handwritten, digital, oral, many more case studies, scenario based. We can all conduct that through the platform. So assessment can be conducted. Then there would be a manual, there would be an auto evaluation process. After that, there would be a feedback which would be generated by the system. So that helps this entire process of assessment very fast and helpful for the faculties. Comprehensive support for all domains and courses. Yes, so this platform supports conduction of assessment in different formats, right from mathematics to technology, engineering, coding, history, and subjects like humanities, biology, etc. So it can support all such subjects to conduct the assessment. Another short video that will give you actually an idea about what I'm trying to say and how things are done in the Assessfy platform.
Presenting you Assessfy, the world's first AI-powered auto-learning outcome measurement system. Let's look at measurement of learning outcome. A singular outcome like the grade or score of 62 out of 100 is an abstract number, offering no insight into a candidate's capabilities at a granular level. Here is Assessfy AI providing you with deeper level insights into proficiency across the 6 cognitive knowledge and skill levels defined by Bloom's taxonomy. For instance, in this assessment, a candidate performed very well in recall or knowledge and understanding, but poorly on higher cognitive capabilities like application of knowledge, ability to analyze, evaluate, and create. Now you can take action based on this insight. Isn't this a better approach than relying on a singular outcome matrix, such as a simple score? Connect with our team today to witness the magic like you've never seen before.
So Now, what Assessfy can do and what is the solution? So, automated evaluation and grading, as I mentioned earlier, there's a process where Assessfy's AI's algorithm provide you instant feedback with accurate grading. It helps in giving consistent feedback, and this is a very scalable solution when it comes to a large batch size, large group size. This model works perfectly fine there. Personalized feedback generation. So again, the Assessfy AI analyzes student responses and generate a very customized feedback to every student according to the answers what they have written. Actionable insight. It also helps the faculties with a detailed report that gives them a complete understanding about the student performances along with the required recommendations, and it improves the engagement between the student, where the student feels like they get a platform to really practice more and learn more through it. As I said, this platform works into manual mode, co-pilot mode, and autopilot mode. So all three modes are open. Faculties can really choose and work into co-pilot mode, which is the most useful mode for them. Then improves efficiency and scalability. Yes, it's a time saving process where a lot of the faculty's time is saved rather than going into the manual evaluation process. You can use this time for conduction of assessment and creating new question set and all. Consistent grading, of course, the system helps you to supports the faculty rather to process the evaluation and generate the grading and feedbacks. And as I said, it's a scalable solution, of course. What we are providing as one of the thing is the actionable insight in the report. So it gives you a very detailed and comprehensive reports that helps the faculties to really analyze about their students' performances. It also, and where you can really make learning interventions, understand, get into the detailed report. Accreditation support, it also supports many of the institutes to really get into accreditation, and also a continuous improvement program. So that helps the faculties, the educators, and the student. This is what the SSY platform does. So that's all from my side. Uh, I can now introduce Mr. Daheria to really where we can start the panel discussion. Sir.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much for setting up the context, and thank you so much for highlighting the challenges which traditional assessment faces. Now, so this is the time to really go deeper, delve deeper into the key topic, which is how do we really turn assessment into a learning tool? Now, assessments are essentially a tool for two purposes. One, primarily measuring the learning outcome, essentially, which can be used for issuing the certification, getting the jobs, right, grading a student. On the other side, it is a tool which can help a student really learn, because education is a formal structure for imparting learning, right? And learning can happen without education. Unfortunately, of the late, and then I think I'm also product of not learning, but a product of assessment. And assessment has been primarily used as a tool to award the degrees rather than, say, aiding as a learning tool. And this problem has also increased in the era of AI and now in Gen AI. Right. So, what are the credibility of assessment were there typically for getting a job has also been lost, because earlier, even as an employer, they do not really give any weightage to your grades or degree, whatever you really get. They have their own set of assessment tools to really check the knowledge and the skill, and they have the multiple tools. Now, that credibility has also been lost due to Gen AI, because Gen AI now poses a threat wherein students across the world have started using Gen AI to really generate their responses of assignment and then submitting on the LMS, and that's also posing the threat. So our today's discussion is centered around three areas. One, we will focus our discussion around what is the role of assessment, right? Whether it is a formative assessment, summative assessment, right? Assessment for learning, assessment as learning, right? Or assessment of learning. That's one piece. The second piece will really see that what are the challenges which Anita has already covered very briefly. And the third, where we will really spend a lot of time, is how Gen AI is posing the challenges at the same time opportunity. How we as an educator can really use Gen AI or AI to really resurrect this entire traditional assessment and turn it into a learning tool. Then Purvesh, my colleague, will really give you the magic of AI. So we've already, by the time we have already discussed a lot of theoretical framework, Purvesh will really jump in and will show you the AI in action, how Assessfy is actually transforming this whole assessment area through the Gen AI. And the last piece, after Purvesh has done the demonstration, will again come back and we'll discuss that what are the adoption challenges, how we can really take this powerful tool into academia and make our life better and the students' life better. And in between, we can really take question answers. A couple of hygiene rules. Only speakers are allowed to really turn on their video and microphone. If audience has questions, they can really type on the chat and we can really take those questions. You can also mention the name of the speaker you want them to really address. And once we really done with our panel discussion, we'll open it for the open audience, and then you can really request for access of a mic. Now, to begin with, let's really take a deep dive. Let me start with you, Laura. Uh, what do you think that what is the role of assessment?
So I think that thinking about the power of assessment's really a good place to start. And if your students are anything like my students, frequently the power of the power of the assessment is students engage with content that's going to be assessed. So common question to teachers around the world is this going to be on the exam? Is this going to be in the assessment? And you find students are less likely to engage with things they don't see clearly linked to the final assessment. I think it is quite an interesting space to explore because we've got over the past years since the 90s, there's been the concept of assessment for and of learning. So it's for learning, as learning, and of learning. So this isn't a new area. But I think the really important thing is to think about the power of how you can embed that assessment, whether that's a formative assessment or whether that's a summative assessment in the course of the learning. So it's not disconnected from the learning, because students need to be able to link what they're doing to the learning activities, to the assessment activities, and ultimately, if you're in higher education, to practical tasks that they're going to do beyond their university experience into the workplace. So that's something we call authentic assessment. So it's really important to link how your students are encountering their assessment activities with their learning activities. That's constructive alignment. And then how that builds towards a great career in a particular field, which would be authentic assessment, where students can demonstrate their relevant skills to employers. So at the university I work at, the University of Chester, we've got a big focus on competence-based assessment, competence-based education, where it's all about what are the skills that the students learning to develop and how are they able to demonstrate those skills. So we want our students to leave being able to say, I'm a University of Chester student and this is what I can do, and here's the evidence, which goes a long way to getting that all-important job at the end of the day.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Laura, for setting up the context. Now, you highlighted a very important point at the last, that it is the evidence. This is the proof that my student has got competency. They have knowledge about Python. They can really write the code of Python, and they have the right behavior of a coder. Now, as a recruiter, so I play two roles, right? So I'm a recruiter and I'm also a teacher, right? So I started India's first online campus recruitment testing way back in 2006. And we used to do testing of roughly around close to 250,000 students across the country for fresh engineer, for TCS, Capgemini, Hexaware, CSC. And in my experience, what I have seen that the percentage of selection rate is drastically low. Very low in India, but UK and US are not really behind that scene. The recruiters are not actually trusting this validity or credibility certification which universities are providing, right? In 2006, the selection rate was hardly 3% all India, and that too for engineers. And when you really don't ask any technical question, and if you ask that technical questions, the selection rate further goes down. So this summative assessment, which actually gives the certificate credential, it's losing its charm. I'll request Dr. Shaurabh if you can really jump in, really address why this disconnect between the certificate which you're showing and the industry is not really trusting that. Where is the disconnect?
So, thank you, Mr. Daheria. This is very, very interesting questions. See, the
Yeah.
academia are preparing the students with the skills which is adopted in the industry, and somehow industry is also equally evolving, and it's a like a fast, rapid change industry is adopting very quickly. Now, during the process, what happened, the current requirement of the industry may sometimes get it missed out by the academia. And
Yeah,
here
right.
is the role of a very strong industry academic collaboration is necessary. The
Mm-hmm.
continuous involvement of the industry and academia will help bridging this gap. The one way is
Mm-hmm.
the current alumni of the universities can be engaged into the continuous mentoring of the students. The other thing is that how we can
Mm-hmm.
match our students' outcome with their entry level requirements.
Right.
This is not only related to the fresh recruitment, but we can also handhold our recent alumni into the upscaling
Mm-hmm.
their career with some
Yeah.
certifications which we can produce, wherein they can grow into the current organization, or they may seek into the other opportunities as a challenge. This is very, very commendable work the Assessfy has started doing into field of the assessment. Looking at, in my point of view, looking at the evolvement of the AI, this becomes a very important in assessment of the every individually personally, so that
Right.
we can identify the strength and the weaknesses, and we can help them pursuing their career path. I'm sure each student has their own career path, wherein we can give them, guide them, we can become a lighthouse for them to support them through the technology. We have a proven data to match our arguments and support those career path. So this is something is very important. The other immediate way of inclusion of the proper career path for the students with the certification is that how we can adopt the recent certifications which are in demand in the industry into the curriculum, wherein the National Education Policy
Right.
2020 permits the
Mm.
university to adopt the recent certifications which are more in demand, brings lot of employabilities and have a better career path globally, can be also included into the current curriculum, and the relevant credits transfer can be also made. So these are the very unique approaches we can adopt in order to make the students more employable, and we can bridge the requirement of the industries through our innovative approach of academia.
No, that's a wonderful and beautiful that yes, these international certifications are kind of like a third-party summative assessment, right, which will really build the credibility and add credibility to our certification and really bridge that gap. Right. Now, this was a little distraction which I was invoked by Laura on term of credibility of certifications. Dr. Alina, now over to you. This one of the most important aspect of assessing to the certifications or use as a employment granting tool or give the grades. One of the most important aspect of assessment is to aid in learning. What do you think? Why assessments are regressing towards just merely becoming a tool of granting the degrees, and they're not playing a major role in terms of really aiding into learning? Why it's happening so, and what we can do about that? What's your experience?
Thank you for giving me the floor for this. Well, just to say, I think initially it was just because it is a task-driven, approach. So they want to just complete the assessments, pass the module, get the degree, get the job, right? But I think luckily for us, the involvement and the expansion of AI and the use of AI in education will help us to change this, because we will have to change the way we assess our students. We cannot continue assessing just knowledge, general knowledge, because this is something that now every student can retrieve from any AI tool, right? They can just simply ask a question and they get the background, they get good references for it, they get a very nice literature review of the topic, or even, initial analysis of it. So that would be the challenge for us, to make sure that we change the assessments, the type of assessments that we have, so that we address this change and ensure that we emphasize more the critical engagement, not at the primal level. It should be more an in-depth, let's say, critical analysis, right? Incorporated into the assessments. We should provide individualized scenarios and so on, something that the AI still has some work to do, at least for now.
Right.
Maybe in a year's time, the answer would be different, but at least for now, this is something that we can do. But that would be all really regarding this topic from my experience. I think we've lost.
No, I'm back. Thank you, Dr. Elena. Yeah. So you're right that assessment should be used to really develop the higher cognitive capabilities, right? We need to really uh, ask questions based on the scenarios, right? Not simply task driven or not simply MCQs, right? And that during COVID period, we have seen a lot of universities have merely conducted the multiple choice question, right? And the performance and the outcome of those students is certainly quite questionable, because these MCQs are able to really assess only lower level of cognitive capabilities, not higher level of cognitive capabilities, right? Uh, but at the same time, like if you really offer more of these kind of assignment, then the load definitely come back on the faculty members, that how do they actually evaluate these many assignment, because currently the kind of number of assignment we give is statistically not significant, right? And perhaps that's where AI can really play a role. Alan, over to you. What do you think that what kind of role AI can really play, or what kind of challenges AI is actually posing to educators? What is your experience in Philippines?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Actually, to be frank, most of the Filipino teachers are very afraid of AI. They're not that very open as of this
Yeah.
moment, because I think they're more not that closed-minded, but they are just not into the use of AI in terms of learning.
Okay.
In our country, we need really to explore. We are starting to provide policies, guidelines in terms of the use of AI in the learning experience of the students. And with this, I think what we can do further is that to really promote not only on how we can make use of AI in the learning experience of the students, at the same time making the teachers' work easier, but also on how we can assess. Because technically, in our school, in Miriam College, it's an all-girls school, by the way, from basic education up to higher education. We really promote in terms of responsibility, in terms of the students, on how they would want to learn, because of we provide authentic tasks, authentic learning experience through our project-based learning. And with the use of AI in the project-based learning and design thinking, we can easily gauge already or evaluate or see the gap on how we can also provide meaningful learning experiences to our students. So it's really hard now in our country to really embrace the use of AI. I personally, at first,
Right.
not into AI, but based on my experience, it's really a helpful tool for learning.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. There's no sense in getting afraid because now there is a report I read that across the world, students are far ahead in terms of using the AI in learning and at least solving the assignment than the teachers themselves. So yesterday I was having a conversation with one of the professors from one of the leading technology institutions in India known as IITs. And they realize that yes, students are actually cheating from ChatGPT or Gemini or other tools. And now what policy they have formulated that they have to really evaluate each question against the chat GPT and then try to really formulate questions which chat GPT cannot really give the answers. So they are trying to really give questions which will not have definite right or wrong answers. So that is also making teachers' life difficult. Designing assignment is not an easy task. It's a difficult task. So Laura, over to you. What is happening in UK? Are teachers or educators embracing AI pretty well? What kind of challenges you're facing, and what do you think? What kind of opportunities are there? Any open question to you?
Yeah, thank you. So I think, like Alan mentioned, there's definitely a little bit of caution around the tool, and
Yes, yes,
it's there's different uptake in different areas, and I'm afraid I can't speak for the K-12 space because I don't work in that space.
right.
But I think it was yesterday or the day before that our Prime Minister made an announcement about how he's really excited about AI and wants to make
Mhm.
the UK an AI superpower. And I'm on the AI and education working group at the university, and I think most of what we do, the lead of that group and I spend a lot of time talking about cautious, transparent and appropriate use of tools. And we must really take into account some tools have quite considerable data protection risks. So
Right.
in the UK, we work under the Data Protection Act of 2018 in terms of managing what sort of data goes in. And because a lot of those AIs are essentially black boxes, the data goes in and then it comes out a different way.
Right.
We can't necessarily control the full data cycle. We also have sort of ongoing concerns around the ethics of particular AI tools, how the data is cleaned, particularly. So that's been something that's come up a few times. And another sort of ethical question is the intellectual property. Whose data is it being trained on? And then the third ethical question is, what's the ecological impact? Because we're on a planet that's suffering global warming, and AI tools generally require a lot more cooling than other related tools. Like an AI a query on ChatGPT, I saw a stat requires 10 times the cooling equivalent of a Google search. So that just brings us into a little bit more caution. In terms of how people are using it here, we've been encouraging people to think through Pointer's SAMR model, so substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition of tasks. So an ideal way to use generative AI or an AI tool in learning would be to think about those really high, the higher end of that. How can you redefine a task? So that might be, rather than relying on an essay question that we know ChatGPT can write quite well. We go, okay, now how can we make this an interactive task? How can we demonstrate the process rather than the product? Because that's always going to be important. The further we get down the AI track, the more important evaluating students' process over product is going to be. So that's something that we're bearing in mind as we're thinking about how do we redefine our assessments in this age, because we can't. AI is like toothpaste squeezed out of the tube. You can't put it back in. So we have to figure out how we're going to deal with it and how we're going to be responsible about that going forward. But you're right, students are using it probably more often than staff, and that might be because they've not thought through the whole challenge around ethics, or they might be just a little bit more technically able and a little bit more confident with technology. And it's really difficult as a staff member to keep on top of all the new AI tools that pop up everywhere. So that's something of a challenge for those of us who support staff to get more used to these tools, because there's always going to be a new tool.
So I also run an institution called Aegis School of Data Science, and I teach deep learning, machine learning. And what we have realized that yes, students of late after ChatGPT, they started actually generating the responses of assignment using the ChatGPT, and some of smart kids were actually using the handwritten script to actually showcase you as if it is written by themselves and uploading it on LMS. So we completely stopped digital assignments. Now we have really brought back on handwritten assignments. So typically after my sessions, I say, okay, take out your paper and pen and then really start writing assignments, solutions on your paper and pen. And then we actually use kind of AI to really evaluate. But yes, this has really posed a great problem, and University of Sydney, Rutgers University, all have now retracted back on old traditional way of handwriting solutions, then the digital submission over LMS. Now, Dr. Saurabh, you're there, or? Okay, it looks like Dr. Saurabh dropped off. Okay, so I have one follow-up question to Laura, to you. Since the topic is around how do we really use assessment to really turn into an active learning tool, right? Right from basic cognitive capabilities, which could be remembering or a knowledge or understanding, to higher level of cognitive capabilities, which could be evaluation, creation, application of a knowledge. How we can really use this assessment to a learning tool.
Yeah. So I'm very much passionate about social learning, and I'm very passionate about active learning. So both of those things are part of how I think through designing learning activities and designing assessment. I think to get started, it's really important to make sure that the assessment is deeply connected to the learning activities, which should be inspired by the learning outcomes. So that constructive alignment between the learning outcomes and the assessment is critically important. Some people are a bit scared of doing too much of a direct link because they think it might be like teaching to the exam or teaching to the assessment. But it's actually really important, because the clarity that will provide for your students will support their development. On the social learning side, the opportunity to learn from peers, and bringing it back to generative AI, I'm going to suggest you could conceptually treat generative AI like Copilot or ChatGPT like a peer in your peer group, and have that as a contributor to the discussion as the students developing their own thought. What I really recommend doing is having the students being willing and able to create something in ChatGPT or Copilot, and then as a group, maybe critique that, see how their own perspective as a human user differs from what ChatGPT has gathered. So another thing that's really critical for me is, where do you have the human in the loop? How can you make the human aspect critically important rather than just producing 400 words of text on a topic? Because ChatGPT can do that with, like, it's probably not going to get full marks, but it'll probably pass, which is the scary thing as an instructor is you don't know if you're going to be passing a whole bunch of ChatGPT generated essays.
Right.
Yeah, so I think if you can, and starting from the bottom, I'm also a fan of the spiral curriculum. So you can start off with that very the lower tiers on Bloom's revised taxonomy, just about recall and knowledge, and those sorts of tasks, we're teaching them not to be sort of ticked off in themselves, but we're teaching them to enable that higher order thinking. So how is the scaffolding, that creativity at the top end, and that analysis and that sort of evaluation process? So I think that there's a huge opportunity to build our students critical digital literacies through these tools, because we can say, now, what about these facts is true, and how does the interpretation brought by either ChatGPT or you as a human reader changing your interpretation of the situation? So that's something that we can think about in terms of designing assessment that involves social, it involves different levels of activity, it involves different processes along the way.
Now that, so Bihu, you highlighted really this wonderful the point that use ChatGPT or Gemini as your learned peer, right? Who has access to almost all kind of knowledge, right? And because sometimes peer learning, what happens, like if your peer doesn't have the knowledge, that is counterproductive. So here you have the peer, here you have Goddess Saraswati, like we call it in India, who has the immense knowledge in everybody's hand in mobile phone and laptop, and you can now really talk to the goddess of knowledge and get the knowledge, and it really good buddy. So this is really, I really like about this thing. So Dr. Alina, over to you. Now, what do you think that this chat GPT, right, how we can really use, do you have certain examples where you're using in your classroom ChatGPT or any kind of Gemini, any other tool as an assistant in terms of really as a learning aid, or designing the assessment or evaluation of the assessment, or any other way as a learning aid?
Well, in some areas, it is easier to incorporate it, right, in some disciplines than others. For instance, if you have computer science, it's easier to incorporate it, provide a problem that they can solve, and then use the students, say to the students, analyze, what the actual AI tool has produced. Whereas if you're dealing with more theoretical, disciplines, it's not easy to do. Of course, there we're a bit luckier because AI is still not that good in writing poems, writing literature itself, right? But still, that can be used as examples as well of showing what the difference of an actual human writing, let's say a poem, and asking ChatGPT to write one would be. Of course, in my specialization, things are a bit easier, and we use actually ChatGPT a lot. I'm a psychoneurolinguist, so we work with language, how things are written, how the language is being used by ChatGPT, and what tricks are there that for us, and how we can actually trick AI thinking that an AI wrote something when in fact it's a human, or the other way around, right? So we tend to use it a lot for examples, mainly, at least in the linguistic disciplines. But as I said, I'm pretty sure, and I see from the other colleagues of the other schools and so on, it's more difficult depending on which discipline you're coming from. for sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This works pretty well, specifically for science, technology, mathematics, where you have some concrete answers, right? Some definite answers. If you're solving a mathematics problem, there are not infinite ways through which you will solve the problem, maybe two, three ways or 10 ways, right? But writing a poem can be in finite ways. You can really write a story or a poem, right? So variability is extremely high, and that's the challenge, right? So typically, what happens when you really uh, ask any assignment or question, right? This triggers your millions of neurons in your brain, right? And it tries to retrieve the information. And if it is a complex problem, it really tries to retrieve the your experience, the pockets of knowledge, and tries to really give you the solution. And more you do, the better neuro connections you build, or better neuroelasticity you really build. And most of us really fail that, yes, this is how our brain functions, but it is, and that the reason assessment is more important task than actually teaching, because even if you don't teach, there are tons of material out there which a student can really access. But without assessment, teaching is absolutely incomplete, at least in formal set of environment. So, Professor Alan, before we actually go to Purvesh, I would like you to really comment. What's your experience? How assessments are being taken seriously in Philippines? What do you think? What's your experience?
In terms of assessment, we're now shifting on really working on creative and innovative assessment. And one thing that we can rely now is with the use of AI, generative AI, to providing more active learning. In our institution, we are freely allowed to work on generative AI as long as we cite the AI, and at the same time, um, we can easily detect. In our, I personally, in my experience, when I was still teaching last year, I can personally detect if the output of the student came from AI, because the way the the construction of the sentence, the paragraph, and everything
Yeah,
would be different in terms of if it's a personalized or more on a human
yeah,
center. So basically, it would really come a long way for us in the Philippines, but
yeah,
we're taking baby steps on how we can really work on, because um we see assessment now as something that bridges the gap
right,
between the what is being expected and what is being experienced by the learners. So it bridges the
right,
gap. And at the same time, in lifelong education, it validates already what the person has gained through the years in terms of knowledge, skills, and even values. So we are now opening also in terms of assessment, in how professionals gain their knowledge, their skills and values through micro credentials, badges, and these are validated now because our Commission on Higher Education recently released or will be releasing their memorandum in terms of how we can validate and evaluate through different assessment tools in micro credential or in lifelong learning.